So, good evening, everybody, and welcome to V2, the Lab for Unstable Media. My name is Florian Weigel, and it's a pleasure of hosting this test lab. A little bit of a different type of setting that you're used to of the test labs. It's really a pandemic-proof event with only me in the space. Usually, for the ones who've been to other test labs, it's really this vibrant one-night exhibition where it's all about trying out works, thoughts, work in progress works, experiments in front of a live audience. Tonight we moved everything online due to the COVID regulations, but that doesn't mean that all of these live or audience-based experiments are still in there. This edition is the Of Microbes and Matter edition. It's a special one that you can see as the second chapter of the Graceful Extinction test lab that we run last year. In the first chapter we explored the thought experiment on how we could leave the planet behind in a better way, if you look at the inevitable fact of the human race that gets extinct. In that case, a quite brief summary to see how practical and artistic it could be. We worked with Petja Inovava, who worked with the chemical process of data centers, and she made a specific site-specific way of dealing with the server parks that we now have everywhere and will become obsolete when we are not there anymore. But we also worked with Ivan Henriquez, who worked with autonomous flying robots to enhance ecological life on our planet. But this edition, we zoom into lives of microbes and matters and speculate about inorganic systems that they will collaboratively create. For the ones who are not familiar with the test lab setting, I always divide it in two parts. One will be the conversation I have with the artists. And the second part will be a space to have room for a Q&A, and we move that to the digital bar. I will repeat it after the event, but it's meet.v2.nl/bar, and it's a Jitsi channel where you can just enter with your laptop and have this informal conversation and informal beer with us. And the artist and me will join later on as well. So without further ado, I want to introduce Lucy Draai. In my research, I came across a project, Banket X Co-op. She did it while she was participating in the project when she was still at the Jan van Eyck Academy, and I really liked her approach in that. And in the conversation we had prior to this event, she came up with a possible way of taking extra steps in this thought experiment. And she came up, and the result that she will present now is outside within, a conversation by Lucy Draai and Ketan. The ones who were who left their address right in time got the publication. It's a really beautiful small publication, and I'll just give the floor to her.
Thank you, Florian. Hello there. My name is Lucy Draai. I'm an artist currently living and working from Rotterdam in the Netherlands. And I have to correct Florian there. He was mentioning that it was the Jan van Eyck. It was the Dutch Art Institute. But both institutes are quite really nice, so, you know, all is fine by me. I'm currently finishing my degree at the Dutch Art Institute, the thesis part, and relating the conversations Florian and I had, I decided to create a conversation between me and a slime mold organism, which I named Catan. But first, let me just introduce a little bit about the context of my work. My research revolves around the question of what it means to be human, how we relate to each other, and around how this relationship comes into being. For me, what it means to be human is not a matter of fact, but it's a concept which is produced and reproduced by different systems of knowledge, which actually on a global scale are conceptualized by Western science and philosophy. And in response to these systems, and one of them being the classifications of human and non-human life, which has quite violent impositions of colonial myths. I propose within my artistic practice to unravel and actively refuse or even disturb the grounds upon which dominant Western contemporary mode of humanism is built. And within my current research, I want to do this act by posing the question of care. One way of doing this initially and is to start from a very personal level, and more specifically pose the care in relation to on the one hand the complexities of transnational and transracial adoption, and on the other hand the speculative artistic practice involving the figure of Catan, a one-celled organism known as slime mold, Physarum polycephalum. It's an attempt to expose how matters of care currently work mostly to support modern, which consider care as a highly individualized burden or responsibility. And it's important for me to opt for a decolonial future in which care exists and practiced collectively with joy and fulfillment together. When we come to this understanding that things are bad for you, then they are also bad for me. Create space for those voices of minorities and marginalized members of society. And a project in which there is a limited few, but by many. So I think it's very important to talk about care to those who might not care or might not be careful. And then for me, the question is, as an artist, how can you allow the imagination to refigure structures of power and those responsibilities? So that's sort of, a little bit the background of where my practice comes into being. And the funny thing is, because Florian asked me, like, how do you want me to introduce your presentation? And I said, like, okay, let's try if it is an exercise in caring together, which is quite difficult because I cannot see you. And I am looking at a screen, and behind that screen is my partner saying 1 minute, 2 minutes, so there is something very weird going on. But still, my proposal is that if we be attentive and do this reading together, there can be energies of caring that move between me and you and the other participants. And hopefully we can have a conversation afterwards in the live meetup bar, let's say. So first now, which I also cannot see, but I am here with my booklet, and I I sent them wrapped, so still sort of a surprise. And I was, yeah, maybe now everybody can unwrap it and open it, hopefully for the first time. I'm sure some already opened it, but you know. And if you go in, it's yellow, of course, which is the main color of the species. It's one of its stages is bright yellow. The title is Outsider Within, a conversation by Lucy Drey and Catan. So if you open the booklet, first you have a sort of a graphic, a planning of Catan actually. And then there is pages 3 until I think almost the end. 14, there is the conversation, which we will go into a second. But first, I think it's important, after introducing myself, it's important to introduce the slime mold, Catan. So maybe everybody can go to page 17, which is a little bit, yeah, it's on the back. We have a little bio of me and then Catan. And I will read a little bit, so also the people who don't have the booklet and can follow me, or at least have a little bit more underlying information. So Catan is a slime mold, a Physarum polycephalum, which live with me, my partner, and 2 cats for the duration of 8 months between December 2018 and August 2019. Catan is a single-celled organism best known for its many-headed appearance and has quite a complex life cycle. Alternating between a dormant, sleepy, resting phase, dried up into a crusty solid material called sclerosium, or shape-shifting into fruiting bodies, growing spores, which await favorable future conditions in order to regenerate. Or a bright yellow, active, slimy, liquid feeding stage, known as the growing plasmodium of slime mold, exploring the environment for food. We named Catan after Indonesian sticky rice. In other words, the yellow cover here, that is Catan. And the conversation that I will read or share with you happened during Catan's slimy phase. So that's maybe good to situate a little bit where and how. So I think it's good to start the conversation on the reading. Of course, since there is only me here sitting, I will do both voices, being the capital L is of course my voice, and the capital K is Catan's voice. So I will take a sip of water and then we can start. Catan, are you there? Yes, I am. Can you see me? I'm not sure. I'm trying, but it's dark. And I don't want to turn on the lights and scare you away. Oh, don't worry, it's fine. You can turn on the lights for a few seconds so you know I am here. Great. There it goes. Yes, I'm ready. Catan! There you are. It's so great to see you again. I can't believe it's been almost 1.5 years since we last spent time together. I can sense you're here too. The air is vibrating. Is it the high frequency of excitement in my tone of voice? No, probably the light waves itching my plasmodium. Of course. I always forget how sensitive you are. Is it okay for you if we continue in the dark? Of course. Done. Thanks. I remember you visited me almost every day for 8 months downstairs in your basement. Some days you came just to say hi. Other days you brought me up to the apartment to sit with you, Fabienne and the cats. You actually took good care of me, you know. I did? Yes. I was nourished plenty. kept in a warm, dark, and moist environment. Occasionally it was tough and stressful, but I remember only one hostile moment in which I had to shapeshift into fruiting bodies to produce spores for survival. I remember this moment very well. I went to bed. Fabienne and I decided that I could keep you upstairs with us. Earlier that day, I made you a new fresh agar surface to grow on. For some reason, I decided to create a landscape of connecting agar blocks. I thought Catan is going to love this. Before I went to bed, I made sure you were in the dark, secure and well to grow. I had a bad feeling, but ignored it. In the morning, I wake up feeling anxious. I immediately walked over to the cupboard, where two ceramic dishes were placed on top of each other, creating an enclosed space. Usually, you're bright yellow, a single large cell growing and pulsating on the agar, looking for oatmeal flakes in fan-like structures. When I removed the top dish from the bottom dish, there were just little dark black bumps on sticks. I ran back to the bedroom while shouting at Fabienne, who was still sleeping. Catan is dead! Indeed, a very stressful situation for both of us. I wasn't dead. I was starved and exposed to light. I was making spores, preparing for asexual reproduction. I was totally unaware at that moment and completely misread the situation. What do you mean? Well, your color changed from yellow to black. For me, this indicated I did something wrong, maybe hurt you, or possibly even killed you, and that would be the end of our togetherness. I realize now how limited this view is. I was just changing my shape and matter in order to survive. And to be honest, parts of me did die. But since I am many instead of one, some other parts decided to transform into crusty solid shape and stay dormant, inactive, sleepy, till the circumstances became favorable again, to change back into the active, bright yellow Catan you are familiar with. How was I supposed to know? Humans, in the material sense, consider their shape as their individual shape, and usually you have only one. The idea that I'm many shapes as a body is quite radical. So you're not a social amoeba like us. Ha! I wish. I would love to merge with other humans, and other than humans, the way you merge with your many liquid cells or nuclei. You have to understand, Catan, that humans have a strong sense of self and the other. That's what defines us. We think of me and you as separate entities. I wish it was otherwise, but for now, this is still very much the case. Do all humans live like this? No, not necessarily. But unlike you, I live in a society of binary systems, in which difference is separated, creating a value divide, which humans use to organize their societies, which ultimately creates an order of human existence. That sounds complicated. Yes, I agree. It is complicated and has far-reaching consequences for everyday life. It's important to question this binary order and its oppressive nature. Do all humans live in the same order? No, there are human societies which have less or different order, maybe even no order. But on a global, planetary scale, there are a few dominant orders who consider themselves superior to others. So if I understand correctly, you live in a hierarchical, dominating society. Yes, I do, unfortunately. I really miss you, Catan. I miss having you around. I miss talking to you. I miss the times we cared together. There's so much more for me to unlearn and undo. Thank you. That is kind of you to say. Would you consider coming back? You mean living with you, Fabienne, the two cats, and possibly a dog? Yes, of course. We will turn you into a magical, shape-shifting social amoeba. That sounds amazing. Lucy, I know there is still so much more for you to unravel. And if you want, we can do this together. At least some of it. I would like that. I don't mind being your living compass, your disorienting device. You have been a good host to us. Are you referring to the eating ritual in Cagliari? Yes, I really like traveling with you. And the eating ritual felt quite intimate, exploring the act of hosting and agency together. I was intrigued by the responses of the participants. They varied quite dramatically. Some participants were unsure whether or not to eat a living organism which they were supposed to take care of. But a lot of participants did eat me. Yes, which was great, because the intention was to create an intimate, spiritual moment to reflect on what it means to consider the human body as a hosting environment, a garden for species to live in. I think sharing your body was a loving and caring act. Although it was stressful at times, I came out okay. I learned that your body contains gut and intestinal bacteria, which are quite nutritious, a great addition to my diet. I've been thinking a lot about care these days. We practice collective care in almost all stages of our life cycle. The only moment you can consider me as an individual caring unit is at the beginning of my life cycle, when I'm a haploid spore, becoming a single amoeba. After sexual reproduction, I start multiplying in diploid nuclei and become many. I grow into one big yellow mass with infinite tails, which merge and unmerge under a unique rhythm and pace. We can sense food at a distance and share this information as a collective through chemical signaling. We shape and reshape, engage and withdraw. We adapt together. Similar to dancing, you have to communicate, be sensitive to each other's movement, accelerate, and at times slow down. Western society could definitely learn from a social amoeba with infinite tails like Yucatan and be less burdened by the individual responsibility of care and embrace care as collective joy and fulfillment. Another way we practice care, we leave slime trail where we've been, so we prevent ourselves from unnecessary food foraging work. The actual caring work or maintenance is an extremely important and valued act of labor within our community. The human species would probably respond with cleaning upon encountering a slime trail. Although I love to clean, I can't help but wonder what that says about me, continuously removing and erasing markers. Are you afraid of making markers? Maybe I am. As a transnational and transracial adoptee, growing up by two loving white parents, performing whiteness has become a skill. Despite nurturing and fine-tuning this skill, I remained feeling the outsider within, looking at myself as an affected body ruled by exterior reason. You should start making your own markers collectively. Yes. Also, I realized something else the other day, seeing you grow on agar, like a magical extraterrestrial creature finding its way in the lunar light. I felt hopeful that being lost in space is maybe not such a horrible existence after all. Since I've never been grounded nor rooted, I look forward to becoming a fruiting body, sending spores into space. Promise to keep caring, thinking, sensing and loving. Allow yourself to disorientate and discover the potentiality of your imagination. Shall we turn on the lights to say goodbye? No, fine. Let's stay in the dark. Yes, let's stay in the dark.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, um, so that's this. I think that's it basically for my presentation at this point. I do want to thank, of course, Florian for inviting me for this test lab. And I want to thank my tutors, Ipatia Volumes and Iliana Fokianaki, Tim Mastic, and my partner Fabienne for the ongoing support. So thank you for listening, and I look forward to the other presentations.
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. Sorry for making the link with the Jan van Eyck. It's just so close to all of the research I've been doing is so close to what they're doing there, and that's also an interesting bridge to Nina. So first, thank you, and I'm sure that we can talk a bit further over beers, although they're digital today. But thank you. I'd like to introduce Nina van Hartskamp, whom I've met, and we are blown away by her graduation piece at the Gerrit Rietveld Academy this year. It's a work, World Within Bodies, Bedrooms and Breath. And during the test, I saw a sneak peek of what you want to present, so I might not spoil anything and just give the floor to you, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course, Florian. Thank you. Well, to begin with, I'm just going to say this. I don't see you very well, so I see you very much in pixels. So I hope you see me well, and then yes. So to begin with, I will share my screen. Share the entire screen. So I will tell a tiny little bit of myself. Share. I just indeed graduated from the Rietveld, and within the works I make, I often include other people. And it starts from this, my work starts from this sort of questions I have deep down inside of me about how we should relate to the world or to the world around me. And I think, as you always want to with your graduation work, want to sort of make a really good entrance into the world of art. So I try to incorporate that. And now I'm going to see if I can, make it smaller. And so I want to start with, well, you, Florian, when you walked into my room, I want to give everybody a little bit of a peek into what the installation looked like. And here you can see this is a big blown up Petri dish. And this is the text of the installation, but you would walk into a room and you had a blown up Petri dish projected on a sheet, a dark room, projected on a sheet that I slept under for 3 years. And there was a video in the corner and there was a Petri dish there. And what I had done throughout quarantine in the build up to this work was I had collected 48 Petri dishes, cultivations or samples from their bedroom air. And and I talked with them over Zoom about, or I showed them their bedroom air. So I sent them our Petri dishes with agar, 48. Here you see the live cultivation. And this was the air of the exhibition. And here are all the cultivations that I've collected so far. This is my bedroom air archive. And I thought it would be nice. There was this installation had a video in which I talk or show these people's their bedroom air. And I made a tiny little a small introduction to this video, and that's what I want to show you now.
Ik zal beginnen met de verzameling die ik tot nu toe heb.
Oh, cool. Wat een gorig uit.
En die van jullie zit er dus ook tussen.
Oh jee, ik ben een beetje bang daarvoor. Maar welke is onze dan?
Tadaa! Oh, wow. Wow. It's the only one with red.
Wow, what is that? It's like I have horrible dreams for that reason.
Oh, hij ziet er vies uit. Oh, giffer. This is ours?
Yes.
This is nice.
Beautiful.
Zou ik zien, zit er schimmels tussen? Ja, zo'n nare manier van concurreren met andere wezens. Hè? Dan zie je, is dit zo'n laagje omheen waarbij ze de rest wegdrukken.
You know, like, I have no clue what that could be. But I can show you where I sleep.
Well, I think I really saw quickly, it seems like half of that white stuff is dead, you know? And I feel like that was me in that room, actually, a lot.
So this is my bedroom. I don't know if you can see. And I had it. You see where my notebook is?
Yeah.
I put the petri dish basically there. So it was really on my bed.
Dus wat ik zie is het product van de atmosfeer in mijn slaapkamer en van mijn uitademing, zeg maar.
Ja.
En ik denk dat het raam open stond, dus daar zal ook nog wel wat invloed van zijn.
Nou, ik begin er inmiddels wel aan te wennen. Het hem al wat minder vies worden.
It's like in each this Jan, I don't know what's the name of it, Jan and Yang in English. Wait, Jan and Yang.
Ja, het is wel een kunststukje.
So, it is a part, or it was the beginning, slightly of the skill, and yeah, and it all started. I will go down with, as you have to do at the Rietveld. I really want to do something with this. Yeah, I'm just gonna be straight. I want to create pieces in which I could save the world from the loss of biodiversity, climate change. I really wanted to do something with that. I was quite a naive and perhaps a bit arrogant kind of way of. But I just wanted to explore that wish and also the feeling of being paralyzed, of this huge story, and also this almost apocalyptic idea of, well, the end of the human race on this planet. So I started reading Donna Haraway, all the Bifo, and mainly, well, at the same time, while I was writing and researching mainly, I had a friend over from Australia who was a scientist, and I, at that moment, really wanted to capture breath and inhalation, exhalation. And I was searching for ways to do it or how to make that visible. So he said, well, why don't you take a petri dish and blow on it? So that's what I did, but not much came out of it. But I was doing some experiments, and then I had left one of these petri dishes for one night in my own bedroom. And the next, then I had it. And then after 7 days, it, it grew all the and me trying to capture this or trying to sort of grasp the whole world, which I think is a well, bit impossible. And then seeing this new world that appeared for me made link like, well, this is maybe very obvious. Many worlds. That it's we will only as our bodies are limited. We will only get in touch with a few, but at the same time, we're constantly with our breath, with through the air, connected with all these life forces and other humans and other species that shape us and make us and on which we so much depend. So I wanted to create some like an ode to that I would almost say codependency. And at the same time I was researching because apparently only 566 people had been in space and only 24 had seen the Earth really as a ball floating in space. And I was like, only 24? But the last one was during the lunar missions in 1972. That was the last one. And that was also the time when the only picture of the Earth floating in space has been taken where it is completely illuminated. And there are only 4 of them, which is blue marble. And so I started to make this correlation with the Petri dish and the blue marble floating in space. And at the same time, I was reading about the overview effect. So these astronauts that experiencing the Earth from far away, that creates this shift in awareness, having this feeling, oh, but we're all interconnected and we're in this living on this one world. And I thought, okay, that is a really nice realization. And I think a lot of people have that realization, but how then to act upon that? What do you do then with that realization if we are all connected? Then I still don't have a solution to what do I do with that? And then I thought maybe I should just ask other people of how they think that where we should evolve to, or what could be an idea. So and then sending people Petri dishes was a way to start asking them these questions that I had myself. So I also asked these during my conversations that I had with these people over Zoom, but also on the telephone. But one of the things I also had was, okay, well, I talk with other humans, but then how do I, in that case, it's a bit similar to Lucy, like, well, in trying to investigate, how do I talk or how do I communicate with other life forms that I can't directly use my voice with, which is such a sort of communication tool that I lean upon so much. So this was also a question I had and that I asked to the people that participated, which I also made a movie up, which I would like to show you.
Yeah, first of all, how do they feel? So, if they enjoyed the being together for a while.
Wat als ik kon communiceren met al die organismen? Ja. Nou, ik zou het vind ik ingewikkeld.
I would like to ask them, like, to the biggest one,
the like circle in the middle. Why they grow like so much like this, and why they didn't be like super colorful. They were like just like black and white. Why you didn't choose for like green or purple?
I would ask if they're happy. If they're happy in this like bath.
First of all, I think I get really really scared because it's like I always had this idea that it's my bedroom, and now I need to share my bed. I think I have quite a problem with that.
Ja, toch wat ze daar aan het doen zijn eigenlijk. Ben ik heel benieuwd naar. Want het is allemaal natuurlijk een soort symbiose. En sommige die hebben we echt nodig om te overleven natuurlijk. En andere die zijn super schadelijk voor ons. Dus ik weet niet, ik zou best willen weten wat ze dan allemaal aan het doen zijn. Omdat er het hier zoveel zijn.
Ja, ik zie het als processen en niet als wezentjes waar je mee kan praten.
Dan kan je tegen ze zeggen, willen jullie ons niet maken?
Ik vind dat ik te veel van mijn energie toch ook bezig ben met hoe ik overkom op de buitenwereld. Dus of ik wel, weet ik het, of ik wel dun genoeg ben, of mijn huid wel mooi genoeg is. Maar dat soort, nou ja, negatieve gedachten vind ik eigenlijk gewoon zonde van mijn tijd. En wat ik misschien zou willen vragen is of die organismen me dan zouden willen helpen om meer vanuit liefde, gewoon meer alleen maar vanuit liefde, naar mezelf te kunnen kijken.
I think they'd like to know who I was. They feel a little bit like a strange family. There's a tension there, sadness almost. We don't communicate. I've never spoken to them before, and they've never spoken to me, and yet we're so intimately related.
I would like to thank them because thanks to Microbe, we are actually alive and we can be having this conversation.
Nou ja, en misschien zou ik ook wel benieuwd zijn naar de levensfilosofie van hen eigenlijk.
I don't know, since they are in a symbiotic relationship with me, and my survival depends so much on them, then I would ask them, is there something that I'm not doing to take care of myself?
Kan je als eenzellig iets ervaren? Dat zou ik van ze willen weten. Want, hoe is dat dan? Om het in het oneindige te delen, want dat doen ze. Ja, je kan niet weten bij een celdeling of wie de ouder is en wie de nieuwe. Dat is niet zo. Dus een eencellig organisme leeft oneindig of gaat helemaal dood. Dus, hoe is dat om zo'n soort leven te hebben? Een soort totaal andere vorm van existentie dan wij.
Yeah, I want to talk to them actually. There is a lot to say to them. A lot of things.
So there you go. Other people talking about what they want to say or how they envision communicating with them. Well, another thing what I discussed with Florian, I'm going just start, this is my thesis and quotes. I just want to go up here. You see some bedrooms. I'm going to go back to my bedroom archive because until my graduation project I had 48, so till here, and now I have some more. Some people contribute to this project by buying a petri dish from me, and then in return I sent them a poster. But the last 4 were actually people that I've reached out for this V2 that I thought I have something to say over or are doing interesting things at the moment. Florian, I can hear. Did you want to say something?
No.
Okay. No, don't worry. That, in my opinion, that sort of made me curious, and then I sent them a petri dish, including Florian as well. And I talked with them as well, showing their Petri dish. And well, I made a video of that, similar to the other ones that I showed. And I will give a tiny little introduction. I made it today with, so it was it's a collage, starting with the reveal. And then we're going to go into what human extinction does to their ideas, or what kind of ideas, or what kind of feelings come up. It turned into a collage, just like the rest. And in the video, you see Thijs de Zeeuw, who is a landscape architect who builds cages. Well, I call them cages, but maybe houses for artists for the zoo here in Amsterdam. So he made the elephant house. You see Jasmine Oostendorf, who has set up the Green Alliance Lab, the Green Lab Alliance, who works for the Jan van Eyck, and she is working on models of communication using the model of mycelium. And then you also see Martin Laroche, who is a visual artist, who one of the latest works he did was a project about mycelium thinking. And so I interviewed them too, and I would like to show you that video.
Ta-da! Ah, beautiful.
Oh wow! It's. Do you want me to comment on it right away?
Oh, so cool. It looks like pretty much like my oranges.
It's quite a good-looking one. Not saying that I'm a good-looking one, but it's like, oh, I would like to be associated with this one. Sure.
If you talk to my friends, they probably say the fluffy, cuddly tree on the bottom really say something about me as well. Oh.
Well, it's weird because I also, yeah, you make, for example, not many things. It's like, so I feel very like connected. Of a different, seemingly different species. I don't know, it's a different color at least, which is not to be touched. Yeah, I'm also surprised. I'm actually very surprised because I didn't know what was going to result. Yeah. Or also, I didn't know that I was going to feel connected with the result. So on one hand, it feels like very experimental, like scientific exercise. But it's funny to realize that now there is a lot of narrative and emotional tale associated with.
What are your feelings? What are your ideas when you think of human extinction?
Oh wow! I didn't really think much about that actually, but it will leave quite a mixed up world. We've been reshuffling the world pretty heavily.
The main thing, the first thing, it's that it's inevitable for sure.
I'm sure that there will be life after the humans, as there was before the humans. Maybe the question is, why is so important human species per se?
Well, it makes me sad, of course. Yeah. I'd be heartless if I said it would do anything to me. Because because of course the world is filled with people that you love and you admire, and there's a lot of beautiful things in the world that come from humans. And
I'm in between the selfish idea of mainly like my love for art, my love for philosophy and movies, and that for hundreds of years we've been creating things that
will probably be really hard to translate for another species.
When you talk about the zoo, in zoo design, you often design for one species, an area, and you keep the animal captivated there, and that's what it is. But there are also mixed species exhibits where you combine species, and what you see there is that those species that live with other species, that they anticipate better on unforeseen situations. They basically they are better survivors in the end.
Human extinction is a possibility, as it will, as it always has been, but there is also like a thrive for surviving. And what I think is how to that thrive for surviving could be matched with a more tender way of living with others and with other species and with other humans.
Balanced human and non-human ecosystems that recognize that the benefit is mutual when you collaborate. And the benefit is mutual when you give. So that, generosity, I think, is also key in that. That's what I would really like to see.
Do you see them as portraits?
And how do you feel about killing them?
I'm curious what your dream is.
In reflection to all of the other petri dishes that you see, is it? Do you see some trends in it, or is there?
So well, thank you. Florian, would you like to react on it a little bit? It's the first time you see it.
Yeah, it's. Can you stop sharing the screen, because else I'm constantly looking at myself. The thing that I still find really fascinating, and it's also in the conversation we had, I think, quite an elaborate conversation with the unveiling, is this enriching of the archive, which I find really interesting. It's we touched upon questions, even already starting making connections on the moment the archive gets richer. You see parallels. You see you also right away start connecting it to seasons, but also maybe occupations, and so. Yeah, I really like this overall, the overall unveiling, and how deep you go into people's states. But there's also something really beautiful in adding these additional questions. The last four, where we're adding this extra layer to it, I'd say, and that's
Yeah.
So. Yeah. No, sorry.
No, of course, no, it's all good. Yeah, no, I think that was what I find really interesting to see, to start seeing similarities between these bedrooms, which maybe are completely my association again. But for example, yours and Jasmine, both being like curators, have a very similar look. Like, how is that possible?
Yeah.
Is it because you move in the same circles, or that you behave similar because you have this certain profession? That I found really interesting. I think could be something to explore further.
And what I really like is also, it came up with the last four conversations as well, is that people right away recognize something about themselves in it, or maybe even if they are somewhat used to it, after looking at it a couple of minutes, they see some similarities. So yeah, it's also really personal. It's for me even you could say another way of portraying somebody, or an intimate moment of somebody in the bedroom, and And I also liked how in the documentation you gave. So I'm really happy that people are allowed to. You can still. I assume you can still contact you and buy one of them and be part of this. Become part of this archive.
Yeah, and help me further with yeah.
Yeah, but you even on the form you fill out while returning it, you say you can also elaborate on the special night that you saved it. Not necessarily a specific date, the moment you arrived, it arrived in your house, but you can also, yeah, have this new memory or capture this memory in this way. But so yeah.
Yeah, for example, Jasmine really wrote like it was election night, and Martin, when I took the photo of his petri dish, had his anniversary with his partner, and was really like, and because they slept there together. So then it becomes this. Yeah, you start also a bond with a person again.
And I like now. Sorry to interrupt you, but after now seeing Lucy and your project, this element of at least taking care of or feeling a similar, responsible of connection to something that's this, it's touchable. It's on a petri dish or is really strong as well. So, but that might be a good note to leave and pick up at the digital bar after the conversation, because we still have one final presentation. So for now, if it's okay, Nina, I want to just thank you and hope that we can find a way to continue collaborating and maybe or finding a way to enrich this archive and also reflect on it later on. I am really interested in that. So thank you. And for now, Pei Jinglin, I'd like to introduce you. She's your Eindhoven-based, and let's see how I can connect. I'm stuck on the Nina's.
Yeah, can you see me?
Yes, perfect. This is this is what I needed. So I first got into a conversation when the test lab was still bound to planned to happen in the physical space with the physical audience, and I came across the Virophilia project in which you are working with local chefs, creating dishes and adding viruses to that, so adding this extra layer of cooking or exploring viruses. That's something I just want to park aside a little bit, because I'm really interested in the context of V2 and maybe the graceful extinction to still approach this. But in this conversation and the difficulties or the insane projects that we thought about, we also touched upon the project that you're planning or you're researching for, if I'm the disclosure of a viral boundary, and in which you had some conversation. So once again, the third one, in the spirit of the test lab, did do some experiments with audience a couple of days ago, and I think that's a good start to give you the floor and see what happened. I'm very curious.
Yes, thank you, Florian. So I guess we will go a little bit smaller than the ones that we can see and go into the invisible world of the viruses. And I guess we'll start with maybe a small introduction, but then I'll share my screen. This one. So yes, what you see here, actually the image behind, it's an array that I did with the help of the scientists in Erasmus Medical Center. So and they are developing these arrays where you can test your blood and to see if you already have the antibody of certain strain of norovirus. So in a way, the lights that you see here are actually the components in our blood that's reacting to the viruses, saying, oh, I am able to sense their existence. And that sort of leads back to a lot of my practices. So I had a lot of, well, not a lot, but quite some projects that was surrounding viruses, like, for example, virophilia, the one Florian mentioned, which is trying to think about how we can enjoy the viruses in our cuisines. But also another project which is called Tames to Tame, and which was the project I collaborate with Miranda de Graaf, who did this array for me, as trying to think about if we have a virus that doesn't have vaccine, was actually quite a common thing. Can we try to tame them so they are less comfort, just like how we tame the wolves into dogs, and so we can sort of live with them? I did the project in 2016 without knowing that by 2020 we will have COVID-19. So literally I see everything happening right in front of our eyes, that how we are trying to tame them now, or trying to live with them without a vaccine. But what makes me think of, and as an artist with a project that's a little bit similar to what the reality is happening, is that the reality is crazier than my imagination. And you see how all the people doing really strange things, almost unexpected, but somehow you also think that's quite reasonable if we get into the mind state. And also, parallel to this, viruses has been really fascinated me, and I was wondering why I couldn't really tell until now. So I'll sort of talk a little bit about it. So the first question I have in general was how viruses and their interactions with human can help with defining ourselves. And why did I come to this question? If you look at viruses and you search for virus on Google, then you get all these images. They're just like maybe small balls, even though these images are still just a representation of them. So they don't really look like this under the microscope. And our microscope are still unable to really see every detail of it. So the scientist has to use a lot of ways to indirectly detecting their shapes and to draw up this image. But at the same time, they are very simple. So if you look at it for this image, which is often used in science and trying to represent the virus, is that they have DNA or RNA, which codes their genes, and they have a capsid, which is composed by proteins, and sometimes they have things that are poking out of this shell, which are other proteins. They're very simple. And also, they usually is just like the previous image, and they're still, they don't do any movements. They only flow with the wind, or from one surface to another surface when the surface touches each other. And one of this really, well, personally I think is quite romantic phrase that a virologist told me. He is studying particularly the virus structure. He says that he thinks the floating there in the air without any intentions, and it only becomes alive when they encounter the human cells. And I find that another screen share right now. This one. So if you look at the description, I just roughly took the WHO description. You have like advice for the public, country and technical guidance, questions and answers, and which a lot of them will be talking about what kind of symptoms they have, how you should behave. but really nothing about the virus itself. And that's also quite interesting in a way that, if you really think about it, everything we know about virus, everything in human conscious except for the really professional scientists, that what we know about the viruses are the things that we react on the idea of virus or the physical presence of virus, which is getting sick. So could they actually become a mirror to reflect ourselves? And that's why I'm collaborating with another, I would call her a social designer, but more like she does objects, interesting, very sociable objects. The designer whose name is Yifei Chen, and she also based in Eindhoven, that we think about, could we use the viruses and create a narrative tool that we, older people who are able to speak and read, will be able to create detailed stories around viruses that also shows our fear or imaginations or our irrational parts regarding the viruses. And then from there, we will know that where is the boundary that we want to set between us and the viruses, that if we get a little bit closer, then we will start to feel, oh, it's a little bit too close, I'm scared, or it's disgusting, or um, or I just couldn't take it. And could it be possible that we can design objects that serve as the boundary? But at the same time, if you look at the pandemic right now, a lot of things that in reality happens a lot faster than what our mind can catch up. That the scientific research is so fast that perhaps our mind are still at the beginning of the pandemic, that we think, oh, it's a bit scary. But now they already have certain treatments that they are able to less the numbers who end up in the hospital. So our mind are evolving too slow. Can we also use these objects to facilitate the evolving of the mind? And today what I'm going to present is the first part of the project where the narrative tool is. So I got this protocol, so I'll get into the detail a little bit better later, and it has all this text. So just to let you know that there are some steps. Also, another system I'm borrowing is the tarot cards, where I got the inspiration from Calvino, who wrote this. I think for this one is the Invisible Cities, where he lay out the tarot cards because the cards has characters on it, and then he write the story along with the spread. So he look at the images and think about, well, what could happen and what are the characters. So I sort of adopt this system into the tool and came up with these archetypes who are the characters of the stories, but I don't have any specific settings like who they are, what are their names, where actually the participants have to make a background of it from there. And then also trying to make everything a little bit abstract. So this is the model spreading, and I will also show the people these images without telling them any information, so they can imagine. Um, it's a way of trying to get it away from this very plain, hard description that we just saw at the WHO website, because with that you sort of already find the interactions being defined by these organizations or scientists. But in fact, we all need this freedom of imagination. And it also has an overview timeline where you follow the timeline and trying to create a story. But then I'll just show you how it actually works with the stories the other participants created. So let me share the screen of that. So now this is the storyboard that we created 2 days ago. It starts with a location. So we have 2 participants, and they are being shown with this map. I choose this area because that's what they are familiar with. So first they look at the map, and they also choose from these characters for whatever they find it interesting. And then it's put here with characters. And I think while I'm talking about it, I'll also get into the story. So the first story, we have these 4 characters. The first character here, she is around 40, lives in Brussels, works for EU, and is a very rational, intelligent type of upper class person who lives in an apartment in Brussels with an old dog, and has an ex-husband, lives somewhere else with their child. And she also really like fancy dinners and things like that. The second character is a male around 40 to 50, lives in UK in the countryside, and we thought about maybe he might live in Devon. He lives in a house, lives alone with animals since he's a farmer. He also does agriculture, and he also grows his vegetables with organic farming. He has relatives in the city and visit each other often, but they don't live together. He goes into the city for supplies maybe 2 times a week. The third character is a very young person, around 20 to 30 years old. Gender-wise is non-binary. This person lives in Amsterdam, and they have a flower shop. So this person is a flower shop owner. And for the contest, this person has visitors like friends and also tourists. This person lives in a very expensive flat, but share with 2 other people, and usually cook and have takeout from local places. The fourth person is an opera singer in Paris, a male in his late 30s, lives in a posh place, high life, parties all the time, lives alone, and has a partner, a male partner, with a pet, cooks himself. Also has a lot of contact with other people, like in the theater, in with his family who are in the same city as well. So what happened is they choose these images, they trying to create these stories. I trying to also guide them to a little bit more detail, like, oh, can you tell me a little bit more about this person's daily life, or what do they eat, what do they do? And then it starts with the first case. So we always have the first patient. The first patient, we have a board here that has different symptoms and body parts where they can choose to start from a part of the body or a certain symptom. So the person who is the EU lady, she got fever and felt something wrong with her throat because she has to talk a lot and her throat is hurting, so she coughs all the time. She wanted to go home but couldn't, so she still managed to finish the whole day. And then she skipped other meetings, go home and try to sleep. And she felt very exhausted and stressed. And then we have the second case. It's also by random that we choose the second one. Well, the second one turned out to be the flower shop owner. So this person also start to cough and start to wear a mask just to be careful because the symptoms. So this person goes to GP and then slowly realize that this is out of control. The painkiller doesn't help since all the GPs in Netherlands will first prescribe you with painkiller. And from there, I asked them to try to think of how did this first case came to the second case. So they say that Well, there's a direct train connection from Brussels to Amsterdam, and the owner of the shop probably went to Brussels and got sick. But why? Well, because the connection is flower. Maybe this person, the flower shop owner, went to Brussels to get vintage things, and it's in a gardening space as well, where the EU lady is having dinner, and they transmit it to each other. But because they got this card that's something, first the black dot and spread to small dot and then back to the large dot. So it's probably spread by insects in between. And what happened is the wasp bite on the EU lady's sandwich, and then it flew, and containing the viruses flew to the second person's sandwich, and they also ate it. So it spread. And then now we know a little bit more about how it spread. The third case happened. The opera singer got worried and paranoid because he's sick, and he's very worried about his job because he cannot sing. And a lot of people in Paris is having sickness as well, because now we sort of escalate to the city scale. People start to wonder what's happening and thinking that it's only happening in Brussels and it's now spread to Paris. So people start to going to Brussels, and then they discover maybe it's because of insects, and they are afraid of stinging. So some people start to wear beekeeper's hat everywhere. Then ask them to describe the outbreak, and then it's being spread to UK with a farmer. What happens is the farmer has organic farming, so he also grows bees. Eventually, he starts to have like really crazy people trying to burn down his beehives, and he's trying not to use insecticide because that's gonna affect his organic farming. But then, well, he might still do it. He need to make a balance in between it. I try to ask them to think of like under what extreme will people do. So one of the very interesting thing that people came up with is that like maybe paranoid people build a dome around the house to protect themselves from insects, and the restaurants will also do that. So if you enter the restaurants, you have to go through this double door first to like have the air to blow out all the possible insects that's going with you, so then you can enter the space to eat. So that was one of the first stories. And the second story, I'll just make it really short. The second story, actually, I'm not sharing the other with the participant because they are sort of similar, and they are both of the participants are European. So I thought, why not try with the Taiwanese? Would that be different? So this person actually came up with these 4 characters, all living in Taipei. The sickness started with the skin rash uh, uh, when someone had a visit to the fish market. And then the second person also got the sickness because he goes fishing all the time. And then the third person has it because she has ate food from a chef who got infected, because by the third case now it's already a pandemic. What happens really interesting was here at the last one. So the last person who got sick is a programmer, very typical Taiwanese character who worked really hard to become a programmer, but then all his life is like sort of staying in the house with his computer doing programmings. And he got afraid. His flatmate also got sick, so he checked all the informations, whether it's fake or real, from the internet, validate them, and then came up with his own protocol within the facts. So he actually asked all his flatmates to obey that. He asked the sick flatmate to stay in the room without coming out for so many days. And then he tried to arrange all the food that he could. So he delivered the food to the front door of the flatmate. And the other people also, the other two flatmates also followed these protocols. He even did this software that tracks where they go. So they can easily report where they have been and whether they have possible contact with the other people as well. And eventually, after 3 months, because the software was so useful, he decided to publish online on GitHub so everybody can use it. And I find it quite interesting that these two very different stories sort of reflect on first the trust of the government, that you see the traces of, in general, Taiwanese people are not that trust with the government, that they tend to do things on their own. So they have their own protocols. But for many times with the other four participants, I think a lot of them were really trust the government and they want the protocols. And you also see a lot of tool buildings in all of the stories, that they try to build all kinds of tools to facilitate themselves to remain the distance with the sickness. So I find this very fascinating, that is already start to reflect quite a lot on how these cultures are reacting differently to these outbreaks. And also another very interesting part is it also reflects on the personality of the storyteller, that if they're very laid back, then the story is very laid back. Like one of the other story that I'm not sure I haven't shown is a story of viruses transmitted from avocados. And in the end, they are still eating avocados and taking chances and think that, well, only certain people will get the sickness. So I find that mentality quite interesting, because really I think a lot of people expect that everybody react the same, but then you see all this different perspectives from the storytelling and narration. That's my word I'm and I say something.
Hello, Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's three really different elaborate stories. Also, even all the scenarios that you sketched out. Yeah, I think there's what I find really interesting is that there's this common idea in all of the three stories, is that while looking at microbes, viruses, you start looking deeper, okay, of course closer with the microscope, but also all of you emphasize social connections. So I think this is really an interesting starting point for the digital bar. I think it's also a good moment to bridge, to make the bridge towards that. I want to really thank you, Beijing. I want to thank Lucy. I want to thank Nina. I want to thank Richard and Menold making this broadcasting facility possible. Dora Frocci, who has been a curatorial intern, who has been involved with this project as well. And everybody, please join us to the digital bar. It's meet.v2, so meet meet.v2.nl/bar. We've sent it in the email as well, but just to make sure you're there, grab a beer from your local fridge, because I sadly can't give one through the screen. And thank you all for this test lab.